Prez is in the building at Legacy Center of Excellence, Bar 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mine is Stickman.
Yeah.
But M1 and Umi is here.
And
Most
Stick is
definitely.
always here in our
To
hearts.
save the day.
He's always here in our hearts.
So, let's just jump straight into it.
Let's do it.
Obviously, the fans are going to want to know, Dead Prez, where did the name come from?
I can tell you the moment it arrived. As before then, being kind of like hyper aware about our political surroundings, our previous name was, believe it or not, The Masses Want War. Sounds crazy, and it was, but it carried us for many years in our demo making process. And when we arrived in New York City from Florida, which is where me and Stick met,
Yeah.
when we arrived in Brooklyn, we were looking for a way to express what we were feeling. We were hungry, damn near homeless, mainly just because New York was such a gritty place to live. Even the landlords were grimy, so we spent most of the time on the streets and in the train and connecting with other artists. And I remember the day downtown Brooklyn where I looked on the front of a newspaper and it said, Prez says this. And it was like, I can't even remember who the president was then. I want to say maybe it was like, could have been a Bush or a Clinton. And I said, Prez. And it was like, it arrived like somewhere between Rakim and like Malcolm X. So Dead Prez became like two words connected that meant so many things. Dead Prez meaning dead the system. Dead Prez meaning money. Simply, what face value, money.
Yeah.
And Dead Prez meaning presidents, but not reaching our highest potential. Not alive. We are presidents, but we are not actualizing what our presidency, if it were our own, what it would mean. So all of those things came into the meaning of Dead Prez.
Okay. So obviously you spoke a little bit about where you came from, the struggle. When you guys came together, what was the purpose?
We are
was the
revolutionaries.
message?
We are revolutionaries.
Yeah.
We are just masking this in a cultural, garb. Our intention has always been clear, which is to tear down the oppressor system, which by name we say capitalism, imperialism, all the isms, schisms. Sometimes today they say fascism, which is, white power in another name. And so we knew that we had to take the understanding we had and put it on the same level as some of our counterparts who had the ears of the community, of the youth. So, Snoop was popping, Big was popping, Wu-Tang was popping, and we knew Mobb Deep, was popping. We had to be able to place ourselves on par with what was happening at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know, obviously, I want to say a massive thank you to you, because obviously we've been communicating for how many months now to try and make sure that this happens. So thank you for making sure that this happens, and to have Dead Prez at the Roots Festival Legacy. It's major, and we're all about activism and making sure that we're a part of changes. So the fact that your music represents that is a beautiful thing, and I can't think of a better group actually to be here. Umi, you became Dead Prez's manager. How did you guys meet, and how did you guys want, from you, Umi, to you guys, and from you, M1, to Umi, how did you know that was a perfect fit? Like, yeah, he needs to be a part of us and we need to move together.
Can I start? Because I know I got to say, as he's an articulate, intellectual brother, and he's going to take this and run with the ball. But but I have to say, meeting Umi was, I would say, predestined for us. In many ways, we come from the same root and the same, trajectory, even the same family. We just had not met. So I would say right before the turn of 2000, we knew we were in Brooklyn and we knew that we were building this people's army. And one thing that we were recognizing is the generals.
Yeah.
And then along comes General Umi, who he didn't emerge as a manager in the management position. He has been a fellow artist. He's performed with us on stages, featured on Dead Prez songs and tracks, had his own musical career. And at this point, he just has so much understanding and overstanding that there's no better person to be at the helm than Umi. So I'm going to let you take it from there.
No, I appreciate those words. I think with me, and I knew this when I talked to you, I think I might have passed it on to him. I've been blessed with a certain thing, and I've found it important to hold on to what I know I'm great at. And I've been blessed with this energy to interact with all the right people.
Yeah.
From my interest into the game, I've been super blessed. And at one point, you have to identify for what it is. You know, I'm the guy that ends up, you know, meeting a number of people. I can see clearly what their worth, for lack of a better term, is in my life. If it's a positive energy or a negative energy, and I attract myself towards that, and I'm super intentional about that. You know, and especially as I started to discover my own gifts, I was just blessed because I needed to be with an outfit that thought like me, that moved like me, but had a bigger Rolodex than me. And then the spirits aligned me at different times with Stick and M, different worlds, because I walk a long line of worlds. And so at that time, I was physically fit into a lot of karate shit and doing martial arts and just bettering myself discipline wise in that field. And I ran into Stick doing that. And then I was also a social party animal. I love to go out and learn to meet people and build with people. And I could find M in those circles because he was, M is what we considered the people advocate of our thing. He was a lot of times the mouthpiece. He just, you know, I was comfortable with him. So he said he covered the ground. I wouldn't even have to say shit. So he became a lot of times the mouthpiece of what we was doing, and we were all very comfortable with that. And so when a great thing places itself together, now we have to identify, you know, what it is and do we want this thing to actually grow. And so we did. We grew it, and they were super confident in what I could do. And as the years developed, although you know, we might have even stepped away from Dead Prez business,
Yeah.
we stayed close to each other, and we started making other moves happen that was beyond what the world knew us for, and actually being super successful in those ventures. Me and him do a lot of cannabis activism and a lot of other stuff that just matters to us. And so it's a bond that came organically, and it came because the spirits knew it needed to happen, and it was for something that was bigger than us, and we were humble enough to allow it to happen, and it grew through us, and now we're here, and we recognize it, and we super intentional about making sure that we play our roles and our parts to keep this thing it's going as much as we can. You know what I'm saying?
Before we end that, I want to say 25 years after Let's Get Free, we couldn't have arrived at this particular point without the connection of me and Umi.
Yeah.
I think Umi and I, because like he said, Dead Prez has gone through phases. You know, we have grown up as men and in our community, and with the connections that we've made, been able to establish different kind of business models inside our community and internationally.
Yeah.
However, recognizing what it means to celebrate 25 years of an album that maybe the recording industry might not have wanted us to make.
Yeah.
And this is because it was so counter capitalism, which this is a capital driven industry, and we recognize the pitfalls of that. And we were not scared to point out the pitfalls. So we can be dangerous in a room full of people who are greedy and avaricious and want to be the things that we say, nah, Malcolm wouldn't have wanted that. You know, Asada would have said fire burn that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we show up with the ancestors on our back, me and Umi. And so we were able to recognize what we needed to do to put the perspective of what it means to celebrate and even give ourselves our own flowers 25 years later. So I just say it couldn't have happened without Umi.
Yeah, I appreciate that, bro.
Yeah.
Two things. One thing, we had our own conversation yesterday about how you guys met. And I definitely wanted to bring that to the table today, because a lot of people these days, to be managers and stuff like that, they feel like they have to go through education the corporate way, the systemic way. And sometimes if you've got a gift and you have a natural ability to navigate and move into spaces, you don't have to go above and beyond to get the accreditation to be able to do so if you're aligned, if you're in alignment. The second thing is, going off the back of what you said, being humble enough to embrace what spirit has said and follow instructions. And a lot of people don't understand that sometimes you have to be very humble and acknowledge the messages what have been said to you, and you just need to be able to deliver, because at the end of the day the body's just a vessel.
Indeed.
And the spirit carries out the work. So
Yeah.
that I love the fact that you mentioned
It
that.
comes through us, you know, and a lot of times I think you will want to be in a world where you selfish enough to think you created all of that.
Yeah.
But come on now. It's like it came through us. A lot of times when I didn't know which way to go, I had to get quiet and the way appeared. You know what I mean? I think being humble enough to and confident enough to know that there's no such thing as failure either.
Yeah.
You know, our intentions are pure here. You know, they're so pure. So it's like it's only success, even when it's not quite like we want it to be. Me and this guy have ventured down a road where, you know, we refuse to lose. You know, and when it didn't look rosy, it became rosy. You know what I'm saying? And so we're really like humble enough to know it and say it, you know what I mean? And because that's important too. And the gratitude it reveals itself daily, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned obviously Dead Prez has been running for a long time, and that you've had to navigate changes. How have you been able to adapt? Actually, what was your tools at the time that have helped you adapt to those changes and remain loyal to the cause?
I can say, you know, from early, we've always had this trepidation about what the industry standards are. We knew we knew what happened to the great artists who came before us, and we had a great distrust of the way that that system was set up. So we armored up and said we have to go through the gauntlet of the system, take the hits to arrive at a place that would garnish the respect of our peers. And so we did. We went through that and arrived. And when we got there, we were quick to say, watch out for these guys. They cheating us. And we knew seeking our independence was probably going to be the thing that saved our lives. So whether, and there's no luck involved. You know, a lot of the record labels that we were associated with either petered out and didn't do well financially, i.e. Loud Records, which was the first place that we were. First there was RCA BMG, then there was Loud Records, and then we were lucky enough to be to rip ourselves away from Sony.
Yeah.
And attain a certain level of independence before it became cool to be independent. Actually, before nowadays, everybody's like, oh, you know, do it yourself. You know, we have been saying this for 20 something years, and so setting those sticks up so that people can say, if you want to get in contact with Dead Prez, you don't got to go through nobody but these guys.
Yeah.
You know, there's no middle. And I think that helped us to be able to say, well, you know, save ourselves. We made a following that we can go through a chitlin circuit. That's what they used to call it back in the day in the U.S. They call those little spots that you string together of comrades and associates and your strong ones and run that year after year after year. And so again, this is the strong work that
And I
we've
think
been doing.
you talk about when we looked at the moment, right? We realized where we were at, we recognized it, and we said, well, how can we make sure that we control this?
Yeah.
We didn't want to be pigeonholed and somebody pulling the string. So it became important that we controlled all of it. Like from the actual the marketing aspects of
Yep.
it to the actual like let's go on the road. How do we do that continually whenever we want to go? Let's start our own agency. Let's do that. And that's where the camaraderie came. My ability to book other artists came because their friendships with these artists, and it was an organic thing. And when you look up, what do we need you for? You need us, like and if we do come over there, it's on our
On
terms.
our
It's on
terms.
our terms. So like, no disrespect to no labels and no companies, but like the Live Nations and that's putting their heels on the backs of these artists and turning the whole game upside down to benefit them as a
Yeah.
company because they have a lock game on a monopoly game on the industry is I don't support that. And so anything that I can do to show you why I don't support it, we're not complaining about it.
Yeah.
That artists are agreeing with that, so it's something they doing that you like. But I don't appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think that's some bullshit. And so instead of me complaining about it, let's figure out a way that we can help other artists go through. Come over here and let me show you how you supposed to get paid
Yeah.
the right way. Like we ain't gotta deal with them over there. And it became like not just Live Nation, but how we got, and shout out to Chris Lighty and all of these other big
Rest in
names that
peace.
they came to us to offer us a deal, Violators, and it was Busta Rhymes and all these big names, and we decided, you know what, we gonna stay with our own little independent outfit, like
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And at that time, everybody said we was making a mistake. Oh, you're not signing. They make sure you work forever. You won't be around if you don't sign with somebody that big. Somehow we knew we would be around if we just stayed on our own grind and trusting in each other, and also the level of accountability for each other. That's something that cats don't say enough. It's I think we be out here talking a good game, but if there's no level of accountability in your circle is a square. It's
Yep.
not going to really move around.
Perfectly
You know what
flowed
I'm
into my
saying?
next question, because
Please.
my next question was going to be, how do you hold each other accountable
Yes.
when you feel like, you know what, cha,
Yeah. Well, again, it starts with respect, and Umi said no disrespect, but maybe a little disrespect to people like those companies who want to cheat us.
Yeah.
Maybe some disrespect, maybe a lot of
A lot of
disrespect.
disrespect.
Actually, get out of here.
Yeah.
But the mutual respect we have for entities and artists who also hold us accountable
Yeah.
has kept us up. We hold on to each other, and so there's the Erica Badu's and the Marley families and
The
and
Dave
the Dave
Chappelle's,
Chappelle's and
Yassine.
they we hold each other up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and they see us be strong, and we hold it, and we have that
Killer Mike.
the killer mics of the world,
Yeah.
and
It's so many that
we've made a family
yeah,
with,
yeah, we have.
that's the accountability that
And
must be had,
and I mean amongst each other, I think there's just there's a disappointment in letting down your brother, and I think a lot of that's with just love and intention. I think I don't want to disappoint my brother. It's so crazy. Stick asked me today as I'm trying to rekindle my health. I'm going through a whole little personal moment. He asked me. He said, "Yo, if I gave you my body, like for a day, or you needed me to hold your body for a day, whatever, like how would you treat my body?" And I was like, it's tough to say it aloud, but a lot better than I treat my body. You know what I'm saying? I just would like, and I don't know where that comes into play, but I'm so loyal that I might be unloyal to myself being loyal to my brothers. That's just how I live. And so there's this level of accountability that just comes with that love, you know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
think we practice that. Me and this dude is beyond, like, just my best friend in the world. So what we've gone through has molded us into something that's really is unpenetrable. Like,
Yeah.
and so what we recognize it, and so we don't want that shit to be wavy and swaying. We want it to be sturdy and upright. And so we have to, when we look each other eyes, we gotta follow it through no matter what. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the beauty of being friends and being able to get bread. A lot of people say friends and money don't mix. I disagree. I think it's the work that makes them a friend. You know what I'm saying? And then after you become friends and it's consistent, you become comrades and brothers and another whole level of shit. And then you really got a powerful unit if you got a bunch of them around. You know what I'm saying? So,
So, thinking back over the last 25 years, What period of time do you feel like you had the most growth? So it could have been a very difficult period, but you feel like it was the strongest time where you'd grown from that. So you were very grateful for it. And I know you're going to be probably say that you're grateful for all of it,
Yeah,
but which part of it do you feel like, you know what, that
yeah.
where we're super grateful for this, because if it wasn't for that, then we wouldn't have had the amount of growth that we had.
You know, I gotta say that it would be before the 25 years.
Yeah.
You know, there was a period by which we were able to look at this industry from the lens of like social scientists. So it was like, yeah, we revolutionaries who are rapping, but how do we make a strategy that can make us live the longest? And it was like that training period of like studying song structure, studying frequency of songs, being able to talk about when stay outside of ourselves as artists, but see ourselves as the listener, and how is that going to impact, and then what does that mean?
Yeah.
So it made every single word before then matter more. So we packed in, you know, a lot of that. After we were able to establish ourselves and sign on a dotted line, and the explosion of support and money and marketing that came, we just started running after that, and really have never had that calm before the storm.
Yeah.
So it was that planning, that plotting, that strategizing that really helped us. And I look back on that today, even the tenacity of the rhyme, and some of that stuff is my favorite stuff to this day. Maybe that has never been heard. You know, there are rhymes that my partner Stick wrote that power me today, that never made it onto the first album, that we say amongst ourselves, but that were born at a time when we were so hungry for that change. And so it was that growth period that really accelerated us through, I think, until today. We actually are kind of, you know, still moving from that momentum.
So is there going to be a release of Unreleased?
We had planned on it. We talked to Lord Jamar about it, who was there at some the at a juncture. He heard the demo, you know, and he was like, and this is Lord Jamar from Brand Nubian. So there's Lord Jamar, Sadat X, Grand Poopa, Ali Mo, Sincere. Those are that was the Brand Nubian crew that embraced us. And so there was a time when Lord Jamal was like, "Oh, I hear that. Let me help you as an OG make that beat a little better. Let me add that snare. Or why don't you say this on the hook? Or why don't you make a bridge?" Because our rhymes would be like 99 bars long, and there would never be no breathing room. So we learned structure of songs and all of that. Lord Jamal is still holding on to a lot of that demo. So maybe you know, Stick
We
and Lord Jamal
definitely we
still
talked
close.
about it, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we still close. We do the bridges that helped us get to where we are. They're still intact, you
Yeah.
know. And so maybe I do know that those lyrics, like, you could never hear shit like that again.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you won't have to hear shit
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that again, because the
yeah.
shit we was going through brought all of those shits out, you know. And so it's powerful. It's super powerful. Hopefully one day we can be like, yo, you know,
There's a bittersweetness to it.
it
And the
is.
bittersweetness to it is that writing that from a point of, I won't, you know, if there was scarcity, not abundance.
Yeah.
There was scarcity, and I don't hate to admit it, but there was not a lot. We were living on 25-cent cakes and bottles of water, you know, as sustenance, nutrition, you know, and but we were trying to write songs about being healthy at the same time. So the bittersweetness of it is we were talking about condemning a system that exploitive and downright rotten to the core. And my hope was that by now it wouldn't exist. So looking back and now being able to put out a demo that still is relevant,
Yes, it is.
it kind of hurts a little bit. You know, we would love to look at it in hindsight and say, Remember when we weren't? Remember the days of slavery, you know. But there's
still in them,
we
yeah.
still in those days, and that's
Yeah.
the bittersweetness of that, you know.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about discipline.
Yeah.
Is it something that you've had to teach yourself, or was it something that you already had?
Yeah.
Still teaching ourselves discipline. You know, like I said, right now, I am in a personal. You know, not to talk too much about it, but every now and then you got to check yourself, and you got to, you have to really ask yourself those pertinent questions about, what it is that you want to get out of life. That's period. That's blatantly. And I think for me, this is one of the things that's always urged discipline forward.
Yeah.
Like if we talking about when I was young, okay, where are you gonna go from here? I had a couple things going for me. Got sharp about the discipline around my levels of success getting into my professional world. The discipline around me just taking care of my body at that time. I was an athlete, you know what I mean? Then, now I think I got into a world where I work all the fucking time. I don't do no personal me stuff. I give everything. I just do, and I don't mind. I got a brand new daughter. I got a brand new son. I got a whole thing going that I never had before. So, I find myself not taking care of myself. At one point you got to be honest to yourself, and then hopefully you got a crew of people around you that can actually speak for you sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
yo, bruh, what the hell, and then that encourages you. And then at some point, that level of discipline, it sparks back on you, and then because we can't be all 100% disciplined out all the time. I know how that goes. But it's important to have the essence of what that feels like somewhere on you, so that you don't go too far fucking astray. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so that's what's kept me afloat, having really good brothers. And then, just the personal things I got in my life. At one point, you got to say, okay, I want to be around a little longer. I got a brand new daughter. That's the first time I ever had a family. So that's my new encouragement as relates to what sparked this new level of discipline, and so it's new for me. I'm 72 hours almost in without drinking hard liquor. Let's see how that goes for tomorrow. One day at a time, you know what I'm saying?
I can say, discipline is an interesting one. We made a song that made it on Let's Get Free. And, literally the lyrics go, discipline makes things easier, organize your life.
Right.
And, plan your work, and working your plan has been kind of, the saying that helps us understand like what it means to plan your work and then work your plan. So to do that, you have to develop this muscle. Discipline is a muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's times when you are weak and times when you are strong. And, there's times when we can find the time to dedicate ourselves to that working that muscle. And then there's times where we there. And so I think is explaining that period in his life. But again, we are here for each other. I got his back, he got mine. So, we go through struggles. But I think it's the thing to remember that we all have the capacity to have a level of discipline. Yeah. We have the capacity. I think I want the world to know that, because some people think, oh, it's magic, and this guy it was born a master of something.
Yeah.
But he had to develop that muscle and work that muscle, and it's not always always like that. There are times when we're weak and times that we are strong. But songs that are mantras, I can say we built that song and put it on the album mainly because we knew there would be days when we have to remember it and don't want to remember it. I don't want to be disciplined. But when it comes on, we like, all right, there's my reminder.
Yeah.
There's my reminder. There's my mantra when I didn't even know I was ready to hear that. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we're here at Legacy.
Yeah.
You've been shown around the building. Who do you think should be here next?
Huh.
And what would you actually like to see in this space?
I love the fact that when my partner Stick was moving around, and again, we come up in community centers and things of that nature, martial arts has become key. I studied, Wushu Kwan, and before that, in my life, different levels of like disciplinary martial arts training. I do think like even implemented in our community, the idea of self-defense,
Yeah.
on a physical level, on a mental level, and a spiritual level, which these are all things incorporated in martial arts. It's not just who ha ha, it is here, and so I think I would love to see martial arts in this space.
Yeah.
And exhibited in many kinds of ways. Tai Chi, Qigong, Krav Maga, Jeet Kune Do. There's so many ways that can be expressed in this space. And as far as artists, I can say like there are people who are unheard that need to be heard. There's a young lady out of Chicago named No Name. I love her. And I think she is her stance is like is unwavering. But making really fantastic music. Who understands that this place matters more than any other kind of places. You know what I mean? So I could probably name like an artist in every city similar to her who need to be in this kind of place. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I'll start there. I'm gonna let Umi tag
Yeah, I
team
go
on that.
back with the artists. I think, in that light, I would like to see somebody really big here too to help add some shine to what you got going on. I think if you could have a Tariq Trotter,
Yeah, Black Thought.
Black Thought, or could
Yeah,
have, a Yasin. I think that would raise the ears a little bit and bring in people as well. To
yeah,
combine them with somebody that's unheard is the perfect synergy of what a community center could, in its best light, could offer the community. And then going back to what martial arts always, I think, that's something we all practiced when we were coming up, and it really solidified a whole mental capacity as it relates to moving forward. But anything else that's conditioned towards wellness, I think right now there's a lot of just mental health issues that we have going on in our
yeah,
community as black men, especially my generation and beyond. We didn't talk about it. It was a thing that almost was taboo, I think, for black men especially, but the black community in general, right?
Yeah.
I think we don't consider mental health a real thing. I think we have a lot of things collectively that we can discuss to arise at a better place in the approach to helping mental health in our communities and taking it a step further as it relates to seriousness. Like, I think we don't, the intention behind it needs to be just a little more vibrant to me, especially in these times. So, in terms of programming, anything that kind of deals with that and the martial arts, I would love to see it, and not only see it but support it. It's something that we could help, bring in some funding and personal funds and outside funds, hopefully, that any way we could help. So the last thing I want to say though is me and M had a shop called Legacy, 98 Orchard Street in Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Yeah.
And Legacy was a that's another
cultural
reason.
destination.
That's another reason why I was drawn to reply to you so quickly. Yeah, Legacy was a cultural destination that it came out of the heart of our bodies, just based on an organic thing, and like most of the ventures that we do. But it was so prominent in the LES, and really, for lack of better, the state made us shut it down. But I cannot walk in the LES now without somebody coming up to me, shaking my hand, saluting us for, just taking a stance at building this place.
Yeah.
And we just did community there. We did community there. So I'm really drawn to the name, to what y'all got going on, and y'all like our sister situation in the UK. So it's like any way we could help, we want to. You know what I'm saying?
It was a center of fight back, and we use the cultural phenomenon of cannabis to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
But the deficit of cannabis and its access to African people and Black people, cannabis is the new cotton and is the $1 billion crop that America is making all its money off of. But we see none of it, and yet we pay the most price for, and we suffer in prison industrial complex the most out of this plant that they've criminalized us for years, busted down our doors, yet now celebrate as the center of a wellness opportunity for the
Yeah.
world. And so that was just one of the things that we anchored ourselves on to make the world understand this phenomenon, and then fight outward. So we would have community meetings around not only what government is doing, but also how we can, embrace each other and build inside this space the ability to plug in and program. So again, when he told me that this was a legacy, our legacies united. And I want to say before you in this question, he made me think of other artists. I see you have Lutan Fire, and I salute you. Jamaica is huge. That's my home as well.
Yeah.
And so Sister Kalonji, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many sisters. We need Queen Africa.
Yeah.
We need, and I'm living in Africa now, so I think I don't know how diasporic we are, but Dada G fam, Positive Black Soul, which is Didia Awadi, and so much movements of Africa I can just see here. So I just wanted to shout those names out and on camera, just for, in the annals of this historical thing that we're doing. And thank you for allowing this interview. And I look forward to supporting you in this as much as we can.
So you heard it, yeah? We
Yeah.
got Dead Prez support.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
On a final note, because we've talked a lot about community, what is next for you and what message do you want to leave for the community?
Wow, I'll go really quickly. Next for us is a couple things. Look out for Above the Clouds. Is a new agency me and my brother started. With another big venture, helping a number of artists. First of all, with ourselves, we got the next year Confidential, 20 years in the making. That's M1 solo album. We're gonna be doing that all over the world.
Yeah.
That's next. But there's a number of other things. I have a book that's coming out. We're into films. We have a whole listing of other artists that we want to support and network with and push out. And there's also spaces that we want to attach ourselves to help promote and push out as well. All that's through this mantra of Above the Clouds. That's something new that you'll be seeing.
So looking forward to that.
I gotta say, we may look young, but we are seasoned. We've talked a little bit about that. So to disappoint all you young people, I'm headed into Act 2 of my life. I've exited Babylon, which is in crisis right now. If you follow what their president Donald Trump has in store, it's more of the worst.
I like how you did that. Their president.
That's their president. Yeah, it's definitely not ours. And he may even live in New York, but he still ain't his president. We are the presidents. And so, with that being said, Act 2 for me is Africa. And building on that soil, the things that I have been able to glean and power up from the West and bring them back to the East. We travel to Africa many times together and have anchored ourselves in that. So Act 2 is definitely going to be how can we big up in a place that really deserves that history that needs to be poured into, and that's definitely the motherland from whence we came.
Yeah.
And so Above the Clouds is that agency that's a creative agency that's going to do things like do a tour of Africa of artists, a continental tour of Africa of like-minded artists. We don't see that, and Africa is fertile ground. Why? For so many ways, the resource and the cultural resource that we are. It is just that we don't have the infrastructure, and we are here to bring all that we've built into that. So Above the Clouds, like he said, and then 20 years of my solo album, which is coming next year, Confidential, which I love celebrating those kind of things, but I'm more so looking to make this platform for other artists to stand on my shoulders and reach higher than we did. So that's kind of what's next. Yeah, and all the things he just said.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And looking forward.